Microphone. There we go. That's beautiful. Takes a minute for it to work, unfortunately, but all right, so we are here to talk about DBA tools. Now, I have not had a chance, due to a week of Mondays, to actually get things going for this. Let's see. I don't see any questions in PollGab, so that's fine. Good afternoon, SQL Dev DBA. It's good to see you here. Basically what I think we're going to do is talk about, let me see if I have my scripts here. I don't have it there, so let me do a new file. And let me get my scripts for... I was going to just talk about some of the functions in DBA tools, but I think I'm going to venture out and do our little thing with the SQL bulk copy, as we talked about last time. I wasn't able to go do things. Yeah, that's nice. We got the error message up there. I wasn't able to do anything last week, Tuesday, with the SQL bulk copy. So let's see if we can find the SQL bulk copy here. And I may not be able to find it. Let me see if I can hurry and find it. If I can't, then we'll invent it as we go, because I have it in my head. But I do not see it in my list of things. Doggone it. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, I cannot. So I'm going to reinvent it. So basically, here's the adventure we went on, just so we can show you all what we did to get this little guy. There is a doc on SQL bulk copy. And the trick to this little guy in PowerShell is that there is typically, when we're using DBA tools, there is actually a principle of using a data table. So we're going to look at this. This is not helpful. Let me see if I can see a different one. We'll go through this real quick. So the crux of it is that there's this SQL bulk copy class in .NET. And because PowerShell is written on .NET, we get the luxury of using a .NET class. Now the trick here is that if we look at DBA tools, which will go right here, DBA tools, GitHub, and the GitHub DBA tools here is going to show us a way that it uses it. Now let's see, we're going to go into public, and we're going to go to write-DBA table data. So let's do this all the way down because we're at writes. So write-DBA DB, come on, write-DBADB table data. In this function, what we found when we were going down this road of figuring out how to do the SQL bulk copy, because we didn't want to, because of millions and millions of rows, SQL bulk copy does allow you to get this data, and as it says data set, I can pass in a DBA table data. Now notice this piece here, and this is where we found the issue. Data table here is an alias for input object, right? So I can pipe it in. But here's the problem. When we go down here to use it, the write to server, we're going to go write to server. This write to server is data table. And the data table basically makes sure that we have a data table object. So the problem with this data table object is that you aren't always going to have a data table. Now the way this works in DBA or write-DBA table data is that it takes an input object, you can pipe it in, or you don't have to. If it is not a data table object, then it will convert, or it will actually create a data table object for you with this new table thing. So the disadvantage to that is that you aren't always going to have a data table. So here's where we get our types and our data table columns. In a data reader, you don't get that. So the way we figured this out is that we went in here and looked at this, and it said everything has to be a data table because the columns come in a data table. Or in this case, they had an example to pass in a data set. And that's fine because data sets contain data tables. But what we found is we wanted this functionality. So when we go into SQL bulk copy, we open up a command which has our select statement in it, and we not here. We go here. So our command source data says SQL command, and then we select column from table, and then we execute a reader. The reader does not create a data table. It actually creates a connection almost like a cursor on the server side to where it just starts shoving data down the pipe. We call this a fire hose reader. But there's no option to do that with write-DBA table data. It requires you to have a data table. Well, we had tables that were millions and millions of rows, and that's a problem because I didn't want to suck it all back in. Say it was 25 gig in a table, and I'm going to suck that down into a data table object, which means that I'm going to have 25 gig of memory used because I pulled down 25 gig of data. That's probably a no-go. Now, not only that, but now I'm going to have to pipe it in or send it into a function and let it digest this data table object. And how long is that even going to run? That's like huge. So we decided that we were going to reverse engineer this guy and run it against ODBC because it was NetSuite that we were using it against, and we had a NetSuite ODBC driver. We didn't have any other way to get to NetSuite. So with this ODBC driver in place, it gave us the ability to write. And now this one is a connection string and a SQL connection. So that's fine in this example. But we adapted that to be an ODBC connection. And we used a DSN equals that. And we had a username and password that we could use. Opened the connection. And that allowed us to get data the way we wanted it in a cursor or in an execute reader so that we didn't have to do the data table. Luckily enough, there is a provision here where you have open the connection to the destination and bulk copy new object with the destination connection, so the bulk copy is associated with our destination resource. And then we map our destination table name and say, hey, this is our table we're going to map to read into it. And then we're going to just bulk copy .write to server. Now this example doesn't show us anything about the things that we can tweak, and we're going to see that in a second. But it did give me the ability to write to server with a reader. So now a reader can be used instead of sucking all the data back at once. And this SQL bulk copy also has another fun little thing to have happen, and this is where we're going to see it. So these are the properties that you can set. Batch size, that is huge in performance. We had to tweak it. We started with 10,000, then we went higher, and then we ended up at 500,000. And not that that's the right size, but for this data set, it seemed to work okay. But basically, it reads 500,000 rows and then writes them to the table. Grabs the next 500,000 rows and writes them to the table. What that does is it gives me the ability to not have to wait till bulk copy is all the way done. When bulk copy reads all the readers, isn't that the same thing as reading it into a data table? to us, it seemed like that was the same thing. And it would time out, and then I lost all the records because it timed out, and now I couldn't recover that reader. And all of a sudden I was dead. So this batch size gives me the ability to set the number of rows in each batch that gets written to when I'm reading them. So the reader still gets not pulling them all into a data table, but pulls them in, writes them, pulls them in, writes them. Bulk copy timeout, obviously number of seconds to complete before it times out. We usually set that to 0 because then we don't time out. Column mappings, here's the rule with column mappings. Now in this example, we don't see anything with column mappings. There are other examples we found out on the web where people use this SQL bulk copy object, and it did map the columns. Now, the rule of thumb is bulk copy is column ordinal based. So if I don't want to map column to column, and my result set is in the same order as my table columns are, then I have the luxury of putting them straight to the table without mapping columns. This bulk copy has a column mapping right here, column mappings, and you can create a column mapping that says column A equals column A in the source and destination. They're different ordinals, but they're still equal. And I can go 2, 3, 4, and I can map them from side to side. Now, if you've ever done SSIS in SQL, you'll know what I'm talking about. You can actually go into the data flow, go into the destination and say, map this column to this column, and you can drag them and drop them, and you have this crisscross thing in your SSIS, and it works great. It's the same principle, same using, same class, everything, so it's really kind of the same. But I didn't have to do column mappings because my ordinals were the same as my table ordinals, which I like to do when I'm doing table stuff. I like to create the destination table to be the same as the data source. You can do more like column order hints. The destination table name obviously is required. Enable streaming, we did do that. We enabled the streaming. The bulk copy can stream data from an iData reader, and I want it to stream. I don't want it to grab and then do. I want it to stream constantly. So it's going into the buffer. Even though I'm not writing it and waiting for the batch size, I'm able to stream it into a buffer where it writes it. And it just seems to me that it's faster. We did some tests a while ago on this, and that actually makes it faster to enable streaming. Most people don't even know that's a setting. In fact, DBA Tools doesn't even have enable streaming on. So they don't even have it. So not that that's bad. I'm just saying that it's an option that we found in this class that lets us stream the data instead of sucking it down at once and then pushing it, sucking it down at once. It can actually stream data into the data source, or from the data source into the destination, without having to wait for it to accumulate. We didn't do any notified after, and we didn't do any rows copied. These are things you can set. Methods, I just basically went down here to find out I could do this. Data row, which is basically a data row that's an array. You can do that with this and not have to worry about a data table. So if I have data rows coming from an object, I can use a data table, and I can use data table with a data row state. But look at this, I can use a data reader. So I was like, this is great. Now, the ODBC reader, we had a problem with, and it wasn't a problem with the code. We actually did it in the wrong order and set some wrong function or wrong properties and stuff like that. So when we got an error, we went back and looked at the ODBC data reader, and it actually derives from DBADuck. So we knew we were okay. Once we had all the things opened the right way, open the destination, open the source, open the ODBC connection, and do all the things, and then get the data reader in place, it then all worked. It just worked fine. We just did something wrong on our side. So we thought we were dead because it was an ODBC data reader. Found out that as long as it derives from DBADuck or iData reader, we could still use it in the code. So it was really great. They have async ones available. I didn't do async because we aren't trying to do one and then another. We aren't trying to do parallel things, so we really didn't do that. Not that we can't, we just didn't do that. So write to server async is available if you're a big hardcore .NET programmer and want to do some async stuff. And then from there, that was it. So we had the write to servers and the write to server asyncs, and that's it. We didn't actually tie into this rows copied so we could see 500, a million, blah. We could have, but we didn't do that. We just didn't do that. The notify after property says notify after, and you can make that the same as the batch size. So notify after 1 million, notify after 500,000, whatever, and it would notify you through this event if you hooked it up some way, whether it's the graph on top of the PowerShell window or not. And it would notify you after, and this would fire, and the event would fire, and we could either get something in a log file or we could get something on the screen or whatever. It was just nice if you use this to at least get some feedback. Where am I? Am I 150,000? Am I 400,000? We could see the rows in the table because the batch size was set, and we could watch the number of rows in the count to say, hey, I have data in there. But really, that's it. I mean, that's really as simple as it is batch size, make it something. Bulk copy timeout, 0. If you have a data table or something and you don't have the mappings to be the same ordinal wise, you can map them by name. So you can say source mapping is this, destination mapping is this, source mapping is this, and destination map. And it'll make itself work together. So that's fine. I just tend to, in PowerShell, I want things to be super fast. I want it to go down and dirty, and I just want to get it done. So I tend to do ordinal based things, not column name based things. But if I was in a pickle, in a pinch, I can do a column mapping and get that done. So the reality is that that's it. So we're going to go out here, and we're go in here, and we're actually going to take this and modify it so we can do some things just for fun. So I basically take the code that they have, copy and paste it into PowerShell, and I start taking things out, right? So I don't need the static void main, so I don't need that. I don't need this. I don't need a get connection string, so we're good there. Don't need that. Don't need that. This gets replaced with this. Con equals new object, type name, SQL data dot SQL client dot SQL connection. And my connection argument list is basically a connection. So I say data source equals prod SQL1, SQL01. And then my initial catalog equals, and we'll just make sure we connect with one that has data so we can see it. Contoso, I think, has data in it. So we go here. No, we're not going to do that one. That was terrible. We're going to do wide rule importers. There we go. There's a table. This has a table that we can use. So sales invoices, we're going to do a select top, and we get data. Okay, so that's great. So this is our table. Let's do a new query and pull this across. We'll copy and paste. There we go. Go back to our PowerShell and say my initial catalog is wide world importers and integrated security. This is PI, and that's it. So now I have my con, and I can open it. And we're just going to mimic this. And this is how we tested it, basically, is we just kind of went, well, we're going to see what we need. Now, this command is a new concept, but you can only do a data reader if you have command. You have to do an execute reader. So we're doing a com equals new object. Type name is Microsoft.data.SQL client.SQL command. Now, the args here are going to be your SQL statement, okay? And then your connection. So first we do the query. So we're just going to do $query because I'll show you how to get that. And then we're going to do con. And that's my com, okay? So my query is select star from sales invoices. Okay, that's what our query is. We're going to do queries here, and now I have my com object. And now basically I'm going to do a and that's not the right command. We're going to do this one down here. SQL data reader. Now, here's the other piece to this fun, and that is that the idea is that we have a connection and a command object. And we normally, in a C# realm, we actually declare our type, right? Now, we don't have to. We can do that by doing this. But normally we don't, in this case, we don't type them because it will come back, this execute reader will come back with a data type. We tried to see if that was really the problem when we got the errors, and we found out it was not. So the reader is just a variable. This will become a data reader by virtue of what it's doing. And we don't need the semicolons. So to start, we get the con object, so the connection. We open it. And actually, this isn't actually best practice, just because you open late and close early. So we're not going to open it until now. Con.open, because we open late, close early. This reader will become what comes out of this command object. Now again, this con is going to be the connection to this com object. From there, really, we don't need any more of this. We've already done our reader. Now it uses a using, we're not going to be able to do that. But we're going to say destination equals, and then just grab this guy. And we're going to put it in another database just to show you it works, because that's fun to see it work. So we're going to say equals new object, and we're not going to put it in that database. We're going to put it in the demo1 database. So here's our demo1 database. We don't have any table called sales invoices, so we're good. So we're going to do demo1 is the initial catalog instead of wide world importers. Demo1 on the same server, so totally good. I believe that's on the same. Yep, that's on the same server. And now we don't need any of this, except we want to open the destination connection. Dest.open. Okay, so now with con query, open the command with the query and the connection object. We open the connection object, we execute the reader. Now we're going to hook it to this second instance, the same instance, but demo1, and we're going to stuff the data in. Now, again, what my goal is I would take this thing and I would say sales invoices, script to table, create to new query window. Come on, you can do it. And then I go like this, and change, instead of wide world importers, I would just change to my demo1, and I create it. Okay. Now there's lots of constraints and stuff like that. We don't care because we're just gonna, okay. I thought I said create table. Let's see what that did. Oh, that's because I don't have a schema. Dang it. Create schema sales authorization. I think I have to do with. And I don't think I have to do that. All right, so let's create schema there. Ah, I didn't think I had to do that. The schema's there now. Now I can actually delete that and create my schema sales. Oh, except this kind of, okay, we're going to take all of this out. This is only for an example. You guys are killing me. Now it can create it with that. Yes, perfect. All right, now we got a table called sales invoices, and it's the same schema, so we're okay. No worries there. So in this case, I'm opening up my destination. We don't need that. Don't need that. We don't need the thing. We're just going to create a SQL bulk copy object. So again, this one is bulk copy equals new object. type name. Spell it right. And it is a Microsoft.SQL data.SQL client.SQL bulk copy. All right. And the argument list is the destination connection. So argument list is dest. My bulk copy destination table name is going to be sales.invoices because we just used it in a different database. I could do a try as well, but I'm not going to do that for now. We're just going to bulk copy, write to server, use the data reader, and we're going to just close everything out here. Done. All right, so that's as simple as it gets. There's a piece where I do bulk copy dot batch size equals 10,000. Bulk copy dot enable streaming equals true, and bulk copy timeout equals 0. Okay, so that's pretty much everything we needed, right? So now we're going to run this basically and see what happens. See if we actually get the data on the other side. Okay, so it failed with lots of bad things because it hates us, and that's fine. We're going to find out why, and we're going to fix it. So right here, open, a connection was established. Oh yeah, you know what? I forgot to do that. So we're going to have to go back here. And I remember having to use DBA tools for this, unfortunately. Mostly because I don't have all of the connection context things memorized here. So I think I imported module DBA tools. And it's better because it relates to DBA tools. So instead of this, we're going to do con equals, and we're going to say connect-DBA instance. I remember this problem. And it's because I have this instance is set up for protocol encryption. And that's a problem if you don't have it right. So prod dest SQL 1, SQL 01. And I need to do, I don't need to do database here, but I need to do trust server certificate, and then I can use the con everywhere here. So that was my bad. Let's make sure DBA tools is imported. It is. Now we're going to run all of it. Can you believe that that was the only problem? Connecting to the, okay, it doesn't like that either. So we're going to go back. I don't remember having this much problem when I did it first, but it's important. I learned it in authoring attempting to author a Pluralsight thing. This one will fail because the con's already open. Let's do this again. Destination equals dest.open. Yep, we're going to have to do that again too. I did forget that, so we'll do this as well. Dest equals connect-dba instance, and we'll say SQL instance is the same one. Trust server certificate. And then, oops, dest.open, I don't have to do that. I don't have to do con.open because it's already, well, actually I do. I do actually have to do con.open. If I do this, you'll see con equals good, but then when I say con with a connection context dot open, because the con is actually a server object, not a connection, not a SQL connection. I need the SQL connection object. Dot open. And that's what we learned when we used bulk copy outside of the dest.connectionObject.open. We found out that there is a SQL connection object here that's obj inside the connection object that gets me a SQL connection. And that's what we needed when we did to SQL. So we did ODBC to SQL, and this is what we found out. The connection from this con.connect-dba instance, the server object doesn't need to be open because the server object is never directly connected to SQL. It actually issues commands, it opens the connection, executes the command, and closes. So we don't have to worry about that with the server object. But what we needed for this guy is actually a SQL connection object, which is in the connection context of a server object, and it's the SQL connection obj.open. The way we found that out is we did con.connection object or connection context, piped it to FL star. And what we found was that this has a connection timeout of 15, so we had to set that if we wanted to be faster. Or not timeout, I mean. But if we look at is open, we opened it, so it's true, but it doesn't always stay open, so we just make sure it's open. So let's take that out. We don't need that. And this shouldn't fail if it's open. Well, it does say, so let's go here and execute this guy. Con.open, and then we'll go like this, and oh no, let's go back in here. Connection object, where's my SQL? It's hard to see it here. I'll show you about where to see it better. We'll do a SQL connection object here, and we're going to do, instead of FL star, we're going to do a get member. The get member shows it a little easier because it alphabetizes them. Oh, it is object. Sorry, my bad. I thought it was obj, and we were wrong. Object. So we don't care about that. But if we do this connection object, and we do not open but pipe to FL star, you will see that it says state is closed. And that's why we had to open it, is because the state by default is closed. The connection context is open because it's connected to the server object. So we just learned that we have to have the SQL connection object open, and then we can do our things. And then we can use that as con. And actually we will do SQL obj equals that, because we want to use that. And then we do SQL obj.open. And then we use here, instead of con, we use SQL obj. And that way we get our connection object out of there and decouple it from there by a little smaller context here. So our new COM has a SQL object. We reader. We connect the DBA instance. Now in this particular case, it also wants a SQL connection. So we have to do that here as well, and we'll just do dest obj equals the connection object, and then dest obj dot open, and then we'll have to do dest obj here, so we get the SQL connection object. Everything else works the same, so we'll just do that again. Now what we also found was when we had blown up in the middle, that it kind of messes things up with the bulk copy. We might get, see, we get an error. So what we ended up doing is we ended up having to do it all from scratch again because it doesn't like that. Wait, why is it not liking that? Because we didn't put a database in there. Because we didn't put a database in here. Dash database is wide world importers, and this database object is demo1. I apologize. So now I'm going to run this again. Isn't this great? So we're going to see that we have to do this again. So we do get everything here: connect, open, sales, come in here, execute reader, great. open. Bolt copy doesn't like our thing because I did dest instead of destination object. So let me do that again. No, I did that. Oh. So what we ended up doing is we ended up removing the variables. Remove variable dest obj bolt copy reader. Actually, I'm going to do reader.close here. Isn't this fun? So we close the reader, and close the reader and disposed it because it's open. We don't want it to be open. Before we remove the variable, we want to disconnect that thing. And then we also can do dest object dot close dest obj dot dispose, because that's best practice as well. So we'll get rid of that guy. And same with SQL obj. All right, so now we're clear. So now we remove the variables so we don't have any messes. So com, we have to remove com as well. And that way we get rid of all these objects and then we can recreate them from scratch so we don't have any worries about that. And it doesn't like dash name. And you're not supposed to use the dollar signs. We also learned that. I just forgot that that's the case. So there went the variables. And sometimes there's no variable like this. Bolt copy wasn't created because it blew. So it didn't like that. But it should have everybody gone. Yep, everybody's gone. So good. So we don't have to worry about that. I'm going to just comment this out so we can use it again. But now we're going to do it again. So now it's all brand new objects. Con equals this with database blah, and then connection context, all that stuff. It's all fun. And hopefully there's no red. Oh man, there's red. Guys, you're killing me. That's why I wish I had that script. So bolt copy still doesn't like, oh man, I can't spell. Type name. And I'm just going to finish off from here because all the other stuff ran successfully. And write to server didn't like that, so we'll figure that out in just a second. So bolt copy finished there, write to server finished badly. So where's my reader? Did my reader fail to? No, my reader should have been executed. So we will go back and see what my reader looks like. $ reader. Yep, says lots of data. Whoa boy, hot dog. So I can't remember if we were required to read from this reader, but the big deal here is that we need to reader close and reader dispose. So until we get this to run through to fruition for the bolt copy, it won't work. So this bolt copy seems to not like that. So let's do this again. All the way up to here, we get everything great. We execute the reader. Reader executes great. And I can say reader.hasRows, and it does. True has rows, so we're good. Connect the instance to database demo 1. Dest obj equals that context, so let's do those two. Done. Let's do open this guy. Open, good. Now this guy we want to make sure works before we move on. And our understanding is that there's nothing that'll stop it from working. There we go. Now we do the destination table name. We do the batch size. We do the streaming, and we do the timeout. And now we do the write to server with reader. And it doesn't like us. The column confirmed delivery time cannot be modified because it's computed. Oh, I hate you. So this is not what we ran into because this is a different scenario, so just be aware, this is what we're running into. Whenever you have a computed column or an identity column, which this does not have identities in it, but it does have computed columns. So what we end up doing is in the reader, instead of select star, we're going to have to do it. We're going to just have to do a different. We're going to do this. We're going to do a query. Script table as select to new query window. And what we're going to do for these two confirmed delivery time and receive by, because they're computed, watch the trick. Instead of selecting those two columns, we're going to do null and null, which sets a placeholder with no values so that when it does bulk copy in, it does not conflict. So we do have to be very aware of any computed columns, any identities, any sequences with defaults on them. We have to be careful. So this is going to be our computed columns, and we're not going to mess with those. So this is the query we're going to put in our code here. Instead of select star from sales invoices, we're going to do this. There's my query, and there's my end. And the query will now do nulls here, which is great. So now let's close the reader. Dispose the reader. It's going to take a minute. Okay, there we go. Close, dispose. And now we're going to redo everything. So we go here, put it through a query. There's my query. And now my reader. Reader opens. Great. Now my destination. Good destination. I create my bulk copy. And I set my options on my bulk copy. And now I do my bulk copy write to server, and it should, the locale ID. Yeah, see, this is where, I love it. Return delivery data does not match. Where's return delivery data? Return delivery data. Yeah, see, this is where null, you almost have to, oh boy, this is crazy. Yeah, you almost have to do this. So what we're going to do is we're not going to do these columns in the new table. That way we'll solve that problem. So let's recreate the table here without these guys. And we'll just select past them. It was just balking about the idea of having a mismatched data type. It thought I had a different locale, and I don't. But because it's JSON, it did act like that. So I'm just going to create the new table again without those two columns. My columns here omit this, so I'm going to reader again. We're going to do it again. Reader.close, reader.disposed, and then we're going to go do it again. So let's go down to here, run all this code, let it run, do my reader. And then, let's see. Hey, Ducky Max. Would it be fair to say that because data is being piped through whichever machine runs the PS code that the performance may vary, although it is much quicker? If so, do you recommend for us to save this as a PS1 and run it from the server itself? No. So it doesn't have anything to do with the... I guess performance does vary as you are actually pulling the data from the source into your server and then pushing it onto the destination. So if you have the chance to run it on the server, you certainly can. The challenge that you face in that scenario is that if it consumes a lot of memory, you could be displacing memory for SQL. That's it. I mean, that's really the crux of the whole thing. But good question, SQL Dev DBA. It does matter in that if you run an SSIS package from a server that is connected but not the same server, that you could still pull the data to your server and push the data out to the other server. So it does have a network latency or a network component to it that could potentially slow it down. So beware of that. You're right. That's a good call out. So now we still does not locality of source column blank. That's even better. I love it. This is awesome. So unfortunately, we're gonna cheat, and we're gonna go back to our columns, and we're just gonna put these ints. So this is the only thing we're gonna put in here just to show you it does work. I'm not sure why it's being so stupid, other than it wants what it wants, and all tables are not created equal. I should have used my other database, but I do different databases in demos. This one's a very special database, and that's why I have it on here. But I should have probably chose a different table. So let's just do that. There, done. We'll go back to the select statement and only do those top 4 columns. Let's see, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. So we'll take out these columns here. We'll just do 4. And all of these go bye-bye. Basically, how you solve that is you cast the nulls out of there, and that's great. And then if you cast it with a collation, you're good. So this is the query now. So let's read or dispose, read, close, and this one will work, right, guys? That's what I think. It'll work. So we're just going to do this, run this, get us new, get this, run my reader, and then run my bulk copy. And boom, it's done. I mean, it's that fast, right? So now I'm going to go into my demo database here, demo 1, refresh my tables. I see sales invoices, I see select, and voila, data. So it did it pretty fast. But again, it does matter, and I'm glad we saw that in this case. In the cases we were working with, they were just straight tables. They really didn't have computed columns. They didn't really have any weird things to do, and it just worked. But now I'm done with the reader, and I do need a reader close and reader dispose at the end because it finished the reader. It got finished, and then it went ahead and did its thing. So it's all good. And apparently I got so excited my heart rate on my iWatch is higher than 120 for whatever reason. Yeah, the auto create does everything in nvarchar 4000s or nvarchar maxes actually, which is a bummer. Would it be okay to use auto create table if we run into the same issue so that it creates everything as it sees it? Yeah, you could. I mean, it would be helpful, except that you don't give the data types. And that's why I don't like that. If I have a table with a lot of columns, I don't like using the data types auto because they do, every string is nvarchar max. That's what happens because the string in .NET is an nvarchar regardless. There's no non-Unicode strings in .NET. So you end up getting nvarchar because you do. You can get them the other way if you create a data table with varchar, with a string, but it's still gonna cause you issues with that. So I typically try to copy the table definition itself because if I create the table definition as it is in the source in the destination, then I can just put data in it and it will be ints and all that things, rather than having to worry about auto create. If I'm doing it down and dirty, I do auto create because it will work and it just stuffs the table in and I'm good, and then I can deal with the data types later, but at least I have the data, and that's a great idea to do that. Sometimes mapping into a staging table and just and then take care of the mapping in SQL is much faster, I promise. Totally coming from NetSuite, but we basically had the luxury of having we read from the AG tables or the AR tables or something like that showed me what things happened. And I apologize, but I got to take this phone call because it's a hospital, so I'll be back. I am sorry about that. Sometimes when hospitals call, you have to answer the phone. And I'll edit that out of the video because that's okay. But basically the principle is that I like to create my tables the way I want them. I can put it into a temporary table and have it be auto-created if I want to instead, because you can. I just don't like the fact that it puts everything in an varchar max. I can change it with PowerShell if I want to too, so that's why I don't have a preference other than when you think about the idea of stuffing a lot of data in there and then having to modify the table. Whenever you modify a string or especially an int, it's a size of data operation. So if you're putting 25 or 30 million or a billion rows in a table, you don't want to modify the schema afterwards. It's not really a great idea. But you could do a select top one, create the table, and do that. We had the luxury in the NetSuite part. We had the luxury of saying select top 0 star into a table on our server from the linked server. So we created a linked server. The problem we had with the linked server is once we did data, once we said top 1 or top whatever, they had data types that were varchar, or they were actually nvarchar2 or varchar2s with 65535, which is 64K. SQL doesn't know how to translate that. It doesn't know to say, oh yeah, that's an nvarchar max. So it had a problem with that. And so we ended up doing select top 0, so no data came through because the MSDA SQL driver doesn't know how to convert it. But top 0 means no data comes across, just the schema. So I had exact schema, and it worked fantastic. We didn't have any computed columns though, so anytime you have computed columns or identities or things like that, it just blows up. Most of the Oracle stuff uses sequences, not identities, and so we were good because you could insert rows and data into that, and it wouldn't actually do the sequence for it because it's only a default. So that's what we did. It was nice, but SQL bulk copy is a really great tool. DBA Tools obfuscates it from you, and that's great. But the big deal is that you have options when you want to use a reader. If you want to use a data table and it's not that big and you're just trying to transfer data in, like say I'm selecting from index usage stats, that's not a lot of data. So as long as you do that size of data and you're just stuffing data in, write to DBADB table data works fantastic, or the SQL Server module has a write SQL table data. And I'm sorry, but it's just super fast. Both of them just work great with auto create and everything. When you're going to do a data migration, you're going to want to do something more akin to this kind of thing with a data reader, because data readers you just should use a better technology for that to make sure you're safe on that. So with that, I will let everybody go. I will edit this out in the video and put it back up, and that way we have the non-pause thing going there. So thank you very much for attending, and as always, great to have you here, and it's great to see a new visitor with the Duck Emacs. Love Duck Emacs because I'm a duck, and so that's all good. So thank you everyone, and have a great day.